Hello and welcome back to the Mountain Gazette Library. I'm John Boozdar. On our season premiere, journey with us into the heart of Alaska's Brookes Range as Ned Gillette recounts a breathtaking 300-mile ski trek through one of America's last untouched wildernesses. Enjoy. Mountain Gazette Library is proudly presented by Stio. Designed, developed, and tested at the base of the Tetons in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, Stio was founded to inspire connection with the outdoors through premium technical apparel for the epic and everyday. Learn more at stio.com. STIO.com. Stio. Let the outside in. The Mountain Gazette Library is proudly presented by Gordini. Based in Vermont and family run, Gordini has focused on the same mission since 1956, to keep you outside longer. Our gloves, socks, and goggles aren't merely accessories. They're critical pieces of equipment that are built to last season after season. We take our commitment to people and the planet seriously and build that into every detail. From introducing the first ever down mitts to knitting quilted dual layer socks, innovation is always done in the spirit of progress. Learn more about what drives our passions and products at Gordini.com. Gordini.com. Mountain Gazette Library is also proudly presented by Visit Idaho and Visit Sun Valley. Discover where adventure meets style in Sun Valley, Idaho. Welcome to America's pioneering mountain town that veers off the beaten path. Explore 5 distinct mountain ranges, over 200 miles of single-track mountain biking trails, a myriad of fly fishing waters, exciting events, and inviting dining options. Plan your summer escape at visitsunvalley.com.
Episode 1, 30 Days in the Brookes Range. Written by Ned Gillette for Mountain Gazette 6. The uniqueness of Alaska's Brookes Range lies in the fact that it is a wilderness relatively intact, that it is authentic unto itself. It is a land that is fulfilling for the adventurer, the aesthete, and, regrettably, the exploiter. Last April, Jack Miller, Wayne Mary, Jed Williamson, and I crossed this range of mountains on touring skis. We had a chance to see the country as many others will hopefully see it. I say hopefully because the airplanes, helicopters, bulldozers, and drill rigs are closing in fast. As usual, the venture started out on the living room floor. Maps all over the place and dreamers traveling about on their hands and knees. We were originally going to ski the pipeline route from Fairbanks to Prudhoe Bay. But gradually, the realities of distance and time and our desire to be on an untrammeled line through the Brookes Range led us to follow a different route. We started from Bettles, just south of the mountains, followed the North Fork of the Koyukuk River into the range and through the gates of the Arctic, climbed over the Arctic Divide, skied down the Itkilik River to the North Slope, along it, then back into the range for some mountaineering. A month to cover an average of 10 miles a day. In this age of extensive exploitation, how startled we are when we discover a country that gives us rivers flowing wild for their entire course. It is difficult to name one near home that has not been broken at some point by industry, dams, or roads. The Itkilik and the North Fork of the Koyukuk are still such wild rivers. Springing from the crest of the Arctic Divide in the heart of the Brookes Range, barely a mile apart. One flows north, the other south for 150 miles. For all of this distance from source to mouth, they are truly wild streams. Beautiful, remote, quiet, untouched. These rivers give us complete wilderness exposure. Our 300-mile ski trek was expected, always bad to have expectations, to be an experience in isolation. An increasingly elusive discovery in today's crowded and fast-moving world. And it was a lesson in isolation, pretty much most of the time, until a couple of episodes drove home an even more profound point concerning the level of present and future development in this far north country. The Brookes Range, which is approximately 600 miles long and nearly 200 miles wide, is struggling to maintain its identity as the largest mountain wilderness area north of the American equator. From the top of the highest summits, it extends as far as the eye can see, and a fascinating array of jagged peaks and twisting valleys. On the north, the mountains end suddenly, giving way to a vast plain running to the Arctic Ocean. Even in its garment of harsh weather, it is a lovely place, but, I fear, as delicate and vulnerable as it is beautiful. Sir John Franklin was the first explorer to pass near the Brookes Range, Jack Miller in 1826 on his attempt to find the Northwest Passage. During the latter part of the 1800s, several government-supported expeditions led by Robert Kennicott, William Dahl, and Henry Allen probed to the fringes of the Brookes Range during exploratory treks in the newly purchased Alaskan Territory. The gold rush of 1898 climaxed the 19th century, bringing hundreds of prospectors to the southern foothills. A member of Stephenson's 1908 to 1912 Arctic expedition, Dr. R.M. Anderson, after wintering at Barter Island, was the first white man to make a summer crossing of the Brookes Range. About this time, the U.S. Geological Survey found oil near a little-known inlet called Prudhoe Bay. Following more discoveries, 4 huge petroleum reserves were formed on the north slope to guard this oil for possible military use. This was the beginning of what was to grow into an inevitable clash between wilderness advocates and exploiters. In the late 30s, Robert Marshall, an outspoken conservationist with the Forest Service, made 4 long trips into the Brookes Range. In Marshall's words, these adventures were splendid largely because the men who enjoyed them were able to live in a world completely cut off from the normal world of men. He was the first to study and map a large part of the country we skied, described in his book, Alaska Wilderness. The Brookes Range experience affected him so deeply that he proposed that the vast lands contained within the general area of the range be insulated from any kind of development. He wanted to create such a large wilderness that even technological man could never really come to know it, thereby hopefully holding off exploitation. This was Marshall's dream only 35 years ago. How fast are we moving backward in our anxiety to leap forward? A new age is beginning in the Arctic, ushered in by the airplane and bulldozer. As Aldo Leopold states, it is characteristic of frontier societies, and Alaska still as such, to become so engrossed in the process of development as to fail to look ahead to the point of diminishing returns beyond which more development becomes a social liability rather than an asset. The ancient barriers are being penetrated. Time is limited if we wish to save any relatively intact portion of this superb wilderness. You see how strong this Arctic country is. I sit down to write about a simple trip and end up a bloody crusader. We decided to go more or less in a traditional alpine style, using 2 two-man St. Elias mountain tents with a special connecting tarp, many layers of wool clothing, wool knickers, down parkas, etc., carrying everything in huge 7,000 cubic inch frame packs specially designed by the North Face. Jack Gilbert of the North Face was kind enough to donate nearly all the necessities. We used ordinary general ski touring equipment that can be bought in most outdoor stores. Bana 2400 skis with Marius edges, cable bindings, Scott poles. Royal Robbins got us a Galibier double cross-country boot, which proved to be very good. An additional nylon overboot helped for warmth and waterproofing. Richmore helped us out with food. We would see how this equipment fared in a land where fur clothing, dog sled, and hunting had been the way in the past, and where the airplane and over-snow machine are now king. From an informal trip diary, April 7th. On the trail, at last, skiing north from Bettles, we can see the mountains across the last of the Yukon Flats. They look so close. It is 5 days instead of our estimated 2 before we reach them. Tough going, sinking in up to our knees most of the time. The snow is so sugary and deep that we are forced to relay our packs in stages in order to break the trail. What an introduction to the north. Everyone is in much better spirits to be moving. Lots of time to plod and think. Our muscles are not used to our 75-pound packs. What a relief to get that monkey off our backs at the end of the day. Paul Shanahan, the bush pilot from Bettles, promised to put in our 2 caches within a few days. Guess we all feel a bit nervous about this, and with some justification. The last stories he told before we said goodbye were about a group of sportsmen he had forgotten to pick up for several days at a rendezvous point. We all thought a lot about that the days ahead. Would the caches be in? More welcome to the North. Our first night out is a bit chilly. In the morning, nobody wants to admit that it's just too much to get out of his bag. Soon the story is told with one look at the thermometer, minus 35 degrees Fahrenheit. Guess we have a right to hesitate within the cocoon, especially considering Yosemite temperatures had been in the positive 70s for the past 2 months. This is with the extra attraction of the inevitable shower of frost from the tent walls every time we move. Joy in retrospect. April 8th. We make 5 miles in an 8-hour effort. April 10th. Lots of patience involved in trucking, hour after hour across this initial flat country. I tend to just put my head down and not look around as much as I perhaps should, so I have to remind myself to survey the country now and then. I click off and put my mind somewhere else much of the time. The river is intriguing with its animal tracks, birds, high undercut bluffs on the bends, and different snow conditions. I remember the people in Bettles telling us we would never make it on our skinny skis. This advice is from the modern-day frontiersman who spends most of his time indoors at the FAA station. Wayne prefers camping Alaskan style with the fire, hunting, etc. Jack likes alpine style more. Make camp, jump in your sleeping bag immediately, then cook, eat, read, and write. Each man portraying his personality and his camping style. A man cannot afford to get chilled when it is so cold. It's too hard to warm up again. The trick to being comfortable in the North is never to let your body get too cold or too hot. While skiing during the day, we would constantly adjust our body temperature as the weather or our exertions varied by adding or peeling off layers of clothing. Even a zipper being up or down made a tremendous difference. April 11th. These are incredible days. They seem timeless with little difference between AM and PM, except that the worst part of the day is 1 to 3 p.m., kind of a nothing time. Let myself get low on food and water too often. We've begun to save a bit of food. It looks like we'll be over in our time estimate to our cache, assuming it is there, with this unexpected deep snow. Eating is one of the pleasures of the day. We intentionally planned the same menu for each day in our attempt to offset the inevitable food fantasies. This repetition of the menu works well, but we still think of food a great deal. When it is really cold, we can each down a 1/4 pound of butter at dinner with no problem. I've never craved fats and sweets so much. I remember nearly being nauseated by all those calories while packaging food in sunny Yosemite 2 weeks ago. Food weight per man per day is just over 2 pounds. Daily total calories consumed by each of us are about 4,500, broken down to 136 grams of protein, 501 grams of carbohydrates, and 99 grams of fat. This proved excellent as long as it was fairly cold. During the warming trend near the end of the trip, we found we could not finish our meals. Our menu followed this pattern. Breakfast, hot granola with milk, dried fruit, Vita Burger, soybeans, hot drink, C&B complex pills. Lunch, half a bacon bar, beef jerky, Gorp, Ulm energy bar, sesame bars, Logan bread, chocolate. Dinner, soup, Richmore freeze-dried stew, dried meat edition, butter, pudding, hot drink. April 12th. As we get into the mountains, the wind crust gives us better going most of the time. I'll never take another long ski trip unless it is where the wind blows. We break into river overflow several times. I'm in a 2-foot hole, but get out just before my feet get really wet. That heavy pack really stops fast movement. One of the most satisfying aspects of the trip is learning to read the rivers. Since we travel on them whenever possible, this is vital. We learn where the snow is hardest and where open water may lurk under the snow. Overflow is our biggest problem. This is caused by the river freezing to the bottom in the extreme cold, backing up, then spouting out and flooding over the old ice. If this new water lies under a thin layer of snow, it can give you a wet and cold surprise. Easy to lose track of days. Wayne shoots a rabbit in the stew. April 13th. Today is a strange mixture of ups and downs. Started out feeling quite silent and depressed over our late start. Then we hit about, feeling really good going. A lot on clean ice and hard snow with the big wind, 40 mile per hour, pushing us along. Great sailing, but we feel like dogs on a greased floor when skiing on bare river ice. Light snow spitting most of the day from a gray sky. At the end of the good river traveling, what a relief not to break through that interminable bottomless sugar snow. We find ourselves at the end of a wedge of ice surrounded by overflow. We probe on all sides, and Jack falls in. No escape but to retreat south a full mile and plow through heavy snow and willows on shore to get around the overflow. We hit the river again. More overflow, retreat to the shore, and so on. Heavy going through a canyon. We just get around more overflow to an ancient cabin at 8 p.m., a hard push on only 1 pint of water per man. Super sunset. What beauty. Most turned-on scene yet, with mountains on fire in every direction. Wayne puts the stove together, and it draws nicely. We vote for a rest day tomorrow to repair our bodies, minds, and gear. A cold night with dancing northern lights. We're really down to the basics of living. They take all our time. This is truly a high adventure. From 1 hour to the next, we never know exactly what is coming. The unexpected is both fascinating and frightening. What a change from civilization, where one knows what is around almost every corner and that someone will take care of you if you foul up. Here, we cannot even set a goal for the distance for the next day because there's no precedent for judgment. We are learning not to have expectations. On so many days, we start out really clicking off miles, only to be confronted suddenly with deep snow, no snow, river overflow, or a strong headwind, which kills all our hopes of a big mileage day. In other words, we soon learn who is the boss and who is a visitor in this country. But still, every day we learn more about the land, weather, and river, so we are beginning to read things more to our advantage. This country is so enormous, we can only flow with it to the best of our ability. Wish we had more time to poke around and really feel the beauty, but the slow going has delayed us enough that it's important we keep moving north. We probably would have had more time if we had chosen to fly directly into the middle of the range, but there is a great difference in consciousness between flying to the last community at the edge of a wilderness and landing within a wilderness. April 16th. It is miserable getting up in the morning. Soon, your feet are super cold for the first 1.5 hours of travel. Amazing how fast you forget about the shivers of the early morning after you get warmed up in the middle of the day. An incredibly beautiful day. The price paid in the Arctic for clear weather is low temperature. This is the first day we have not run into treacherously deep snow. About 200 feet from camp, we find grizzly tracks that were not there the night before. Jed thought someone had been walking with snowshoes when he first saw the tracks. They seemed that big. Wayne estimates the bear is about 700 pounds. What in hell is he doing out now? We follow his tracks for about 5 miles upstream. Very nice to see his trail leave the river. We skied very close together for a while that day. April 17th. We are a small group of men on a river of ice with steep walls on either side. Through the gates of the Arctic, a dream come true. Robert Marshall had named it so because of the 2 strategically located mountains on either side of the river, which appeared to be a doorway to the wilderness to the north. He called the peak on the east Boreal Mountain, the one on the west Frigid Crags. We locate our cache in a dilapidated cabin late in the day. Shanahan remembered. From our camp, we can see the top 2,500 feet of Dunarak. The spectacular and commanding Devil Mountain named for the Eskimo word used to describe the spirits which influence their world. It is easy to understand how Marshall miscalculated its height by 2,000 feet. April 18th. We decide to relax and spend 3 days exploring the area around Dunarak. It is a deserved relief from the plodding. The 4 of us are learning to be in the here and now, to enjoy each moment for itself. A 50-mile-an-hour wind gives us an exhilarating roller coaster ride down the bare ice of Ernie Creek. 2 helicopters from the oil camps far away land on us, searching for a downed chopper. What a lousy shock, this rush of technology. It doesn't take long to learn who owns this country. Oil. We are so bummed out by this that we have second thoughts about continuing to the North Slope and the oil camps there. But we finally decided to keep heading north. We all wish this had not happened. It was so completely satisfying to be in the wilderness. Now we realize that it is wilderness and that it is not at the same time. Hard to escape from the 20th century. I wonder what the Brookes Range will be like in 10 to 20 years. I hope Glen Canyon does not continue to lead the parade. April 20th. We climbed Two Prong Mountain. I am alone for a good part of the day. On one occasion, being a bit ahead, I stopped to wait and rested alone. So quiet. Absolutely still. It seems man is such a mundane, base, crass, uncomprehending, and insensitive intrusion into this perfectness. This wilderness is so much unto itself. Man, through his endeavors, will try to improve upon it, only to end up, ironically, destroying that which he loves. My own voice seems a vulgar thrust into the completeness about me. Man cannot improve upon this. He can only visit, look, feel, and ask gently. The others join me. We learn more about this upside-down far north range. The wind blows in the valleys more than on the peaks, and as we sit in the still air at the summit, we can hear the cold wind funneling through the valley below with the roar of a passing freight train. Further, there is very little avalanche action due to a snowfall of under 24 inches and little wind slab buildup on the high peaks. April 21st. Moving north again after 4 nights in one place, the wind is strong and cold down the valley in our faces. We receive energy and enjoyment from cutting into it. As we ski, Dunarak towers above us, that jagged peak of isolated igneous rock rising apart from the other lower and less impressive summits in our view. Camp is pitched at the northern edge of the tree line, with an approximate elevation of 2,000 feet. It is interesting to note that the black spruce at the tree line is the same size as those back down the valley. The trees just plain stop appearing. This supports Robert Marshall's theory that the tree line is where it is because the trees have not had time since the last glacial age to advance further north, not because conditions are too harsh for them to survive. April 22nd. Marshall mentions an impassable canyon on the North Fork of the Koyukuk, just south of the Arctic Divide. This was the barrier that we were most concerned about. Could we get north of this gorge? Its walls are formed of twisted and folded slabs and strata more than a dozen feet thick. We estimate the canyon to be about 2 miles long and more than 600 feet deep, with the North Fork falling through it in great cascades of frozen water. It is a grotesquely beautiful place that dwarfs us. We cover the 7 miles from camp to the gorge on foot since there is almost no snow due to wind action. Just inside the mouth of the chasm, we hoist ourselves into a small tributary canyon, follow this to the east, and then climb a steep snow and scree field to the rolling snow-covered tundra leading to the Arctic Divide. Not nearly impassable. We spy 3 herds of Dall sheep near the gorge. An eerie experience is at hand. After moving up this completely wind-scoured and dark-veiled valley all morning, and then breaking over the lip of the gorge, we enter, within the distance of 100 yards, a world of complete whiteness and stillness. A man may be quick to adapt, but not quick enough to cope with such a total change within such a short time interval, literally from black to white. It is almost a supernatural transition. We camp 1/2 mile south of the divide. April 23rd. At an early hour, we're over the Arctic Divide. The others stay for a while, opening our imaginary bottles of champagne. I'm a fair distance down our new valley, the Itkalik, on good snow. I decided to take a chance and ski alone to see how fast I could make our prearranged campsite. My racing background, or the fact that I am a 20th century man, makes me go for time. I find that even though I'm pleased with making my goal of 3 hours, the day tends to lack something because I am preoccupied with time. Time must be forgotten in the mountains. Pressing for minutes only lessens the experience. That night, we tried to work out the theory for the formation of the numerous glacier humps of ice we have passed on the Koyukuk and Itkalik rivers for many miles on either side of the divide. On rivers that must be only a foot or 2 deep in the summer, these blisters of robin's egg blue ice may be 12 feet high and 50 feet long. On our return to Fairbanks, nobody at the University of Alaska could give us a satisfactory explanation. The wildlife has been more impressive than we had hoped. Moose, caribou, Dall sheep, fox, porcupine, rabbit, ground squirrel, ptarmigan, snowy owls, raven, and tracks of grizzly, wolf, wolverine, and lynx. Indeed, it is a fertile land, even during the harshness of winter. April 25th. We reach the edge of the North Slope where the Brookes Range gives way abruptly to a broad plain and encounter a 6-mile stretch of absolutely bare ground which we must walk across. We pitch our only camp without snow. Jack is unsuccessful in trying to get within camera range of a herd of caribou. April 26th. Skiing eastward on the North Slope for 3 days. Vast expanses of snow, and we are like ants moving at a snail's pace across a frozen desert. The sun is very hot at midday, and we are fortunate not to have much wind. We find our second cache in fairly good condition after a few minor alterations by a friendly fox. April 29th. Suddenly, we miss the mountains. So we choose a valley surrounded by high peaks and head back to the south. We spend 5 days climbing 4 virgin peaks and gorge ourselves on the last of our food. Relative self-sufficiency is one reward of any wilderness experience. It is what the frontiersman had, and it is what modern society rips away. On the other hand, expeditions are hard because the people involved are usually all very independent, and it's very hard to adjust to others' idiosyncrasies. Apparently, it is very important never to lose sight of the overall goals, to remain detached, and above all, the pettiness that only leads to brooding and a lessening of the experience. A sense of perspective is what is in question. This northern country puts one in contact with some things that are a lot bigger than the individual. Still, it is a struggle to control and know oneself, master the situation, maintain a positive attitude, exude generosity and goodwill, and remain open. Despite the challenges, nothing can overshadow the joy and vitality found in a wild and beautiful country, the freedom from the monotony that dulls us, and the energy received from nature. It's simple. All one must do is place oneself in the nurturing hands of nature to receive her blessings. But how many of us truly do? May 4th. Our last days are fast-moving with the arrival of breakup. 5 days before we use special cold green hard wax on our skis. Now, after warm temperatures, a Chinook wind, and long hours of daylight, we need red warm weather clister wax. We break through the river ice and walk in places we had skied across 5 days previously. When breakup comes to the north, it wastes little time. We ski out to Galbraith Lake Oil Pipeline Camp with no idea of the reception we'll receive at this North Slope outpost. There is every kind of good and bad fantasy in our minds as we near it. All our doubts are needless, for they treat us with exceptional hospitality. But what culture shock! After being unto ourselves for weeks, suddenly we are in the midst of 60 men, showers, clean sheets, movies, steak, and crab legs. The walls of the camp's linked, self-contained units are like dividers between totally different worlds, one of creature comforts and the other of raw nature. Even outside, the change is felt, as the wind must now tunnel its way through rows and rows of trucks, bulldozers, helicopters, drill rigs, and stacked 48-inch Japanese pipe. All this on the North Slope at the edge of the Brookes Range. Unbelievable, but believable. The Alaskan pipeline, if and when it is completed, would move 2 million barrels of hot crude oil per day across the full width of this relatively intact wilderness. It would cross several major rivers and drainage areas, as well as 3 major earthquake zones. Oil companies are attempting to treat the land as kindly as possible while progressing with their investigations. But the whole thing is another compromise. We've seen it happen again and again. The frightening thing about compromises involving wilderness is that there is no real compromise, because we are losing something that can never be replaced. It is a one-way street. The Brookes Range may be a place to test expertise with hiking boots, canoe, or ski, or the source of an enriching, beautiful experience. Or it may provide the ground for a challenging route of a pipeline or road. If scarcity is an indication of that which is precious to us, wilderness such as the Brookes Range is, without question, of utmost value. As an undivided entity, it possesses a special quality that transcends any of the small patches of wilderness we find in the contiguous states. It is part of a greater northern wilderness whose primary value is its wholeness. In our ski crossing of the Brookes Range, We learned about ourselves and the country, and we found enjoyment in it all. But where does that leave us? We never figured on falling so in love with this cold country that a pipeline and the thought of the subsequent development would hang so heavily with us. But that's what happened. Sure, we fooled the snow grunts, so we lose another swath of wilderness. What a shame for those of us who love it. It seems that nature played a mean trick on the North Slope by putting oil under it, and a mean trick on the Brookes Range by putting oil north of it. But she played a fair game with the four of us who had a chance to see her at her untamed, uncivilized best. Only one valley to the west of the pipeline route that will divide the Brookes Range once and for all. Ned Gillette is the assistant director of the Copper Mountain, Colorado ski school in charge of touring and mountain programs. Gillette was a member of the U.S. ski team. He competed at the 1968 Olympics and was captain of the Dartmouth College ski team. He spent the previous 2 winters as a guide and instructor at the Yosemite Mountaineering School. Mountain Gazette Library is produced by Mountain Gazette. Executive produced by Mike Rogie. Produced and hosted by John Buzdar. Austin Holt is our marketing director. No part of this podcast or the magazine can be reproduced or used to train large language models without express written consent from Verb Cabin LLC. That means you, OpenAI. To learn more about Mountain Gazette, please visit us at mountaingazette.com.